Welcome to the DingeCast. We are driven by a passion for discovery and the belief that history should be uncovered. Our mission is to reveal the hidden realities of the past to bring history into the light. Welcome to the DingeCast.
All right, welcome to the DingeCast after show.
The after party.
Well, where anything is possible.
Anything.
And
Who knows? We don't know what we're going to talk about. We're just gonna go with the flow here.
Okay, so we've had these conversations about my interest in, I don't even think it's extraterrestrials anymore, but the phenomenon of UAPs and strange things happening in our skies and under the water. So my journey began when I was 12 years old. My first actual encounter, it was an encounter of the second kind, which was I was sitting on a seawall when I was living in Hawaii with my parents moved us there when I was a kid. And I'm sitting there watching the sun go down. And I see this little black dot. I mean, way, way out in the ocean, maybe a mile or more, maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles. And I kept on watching this dot thinking it was going to move because I thought it was a boat. Sure enough, it didn't move. It stayed in the same position, and it kind of disappeared as the swells moved through. It would bob up and down, up and down. And then, after watching this thing for about 20 minutes, a jumbo jet was flying in, let's just say from left to right, into the Honolulu airport. And this thing lifted straight up out of the water. I mean, I'm sitting here watching this as a kid.
Yeah.
Straight up out of the water, went right behind the contrail of the airplane, and then followed it for a few miles, and then just zipped out into space. My eyeballs and my brain recorded that.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've wondered, what on earth? What is going on? Now, this is, again, 1966.
Okay.
Did we have that kind of craft in those days? I guess we did, or we didn't.
Yeah.
But
let's just take a quick step back. So it's like, oh, they're talking about aliens, but we're talking about what the Pentagon and the Navy is talking about, right? Through the Freedom of Information,
yes,
the FOIA requests to release this, the pressure, people knew that they had footage from either their sensors. So that footage is out there now, right? This was released by the U.S. government. So we've kind of entered a new space of less speculation, less, what's the word I'm looking for? Like to
more evidence-based.
Yeah, that it's like we can look at credible footage now.
Yeah.
Thank you to people like Jeremy Corbell for pushing to get all of that released for us.
Right.
And and what we talked about, I mean, both of us have kind of had this theory for a while. Like when you look at whatever it is, the Tic Tac video, any of these, I had a lot of theories initially, but the longer I looked at these, the more I said, it's not aliens.
No.
That everything for me points to that's some kind of a terrestrial being that lives in the ocean. I mean, obviously is amphibious. It can be on land or
Right.
underwater. So anyway, I just wanted to just kind of set that context that this is a serious discussion that people are having now, and there's a lot of pressure in the government to release more of what they have so this can be better understood for national security and any other reason that you need.
Yeah,
it's a serious topic nowadays.
I am not so focused on it for reasons that most people would think. For me, it was the beginning of curiosity. And so when I talk
experience you had as a kid, you mean, yeah.
Absolutely. It just like expanded my mind to say there are answers to these questions that I want to find during the course of my life. You said you want answers. I want answers.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure. Especially
and
with
it's getting
stuff like
closer. That. I mean, this has been a whole lifetime for me of asking the same stupid question. What the hell was that?
Yeah.
Now, it's getting closer, but when I talk about the Curse of Oak Island and they find these little nails and these little trinkets of stuff that they would never expect to find there, to me, there's a puzzle, and these are pieces of a puzzle that are completing a bigger story. I want to understand the whole story. I don't want just bits and
Totally.
pieces of it.
And what's wrong with asking questions? It's not like I'm not saying, oh, we found this, so it's that. It's just like, hmm, that's very interesting that that was found. What does it mean? Right? And let me ask you this. So it's like you had that experience as a kid and through decades of maybe people questioning you and this and that. Like when in recent years, now that all this stuff is coming out, does that feel like validation that you're like, okay, now I'm starting to understand maybe what I saw, or at least you feel like I'm not alone?
Well, it isn't necessarily validation because I really wasn't looking for validation.
Hmm.
I was looking for the answers. I wanted to answer the question, what? What the hell was that? And so it takes you in a number of different directions. One, technologically, you begin to wonder about what kind of technological innovations or what kind of technological um, machinery we had. But again, they're going now, they're saying, and there's a new documentary out on the subject, that it's been going on since the 1930s. The crash retrieval programs have been going on since then. And so, is it possible that we back engineered these things, whatever they are, from wherever they are, back, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s? Of course it is.
Yeah. Can't rule
Uh,
it
you
out.
know, so, and then second of all, a curiosity, an unquenchable curiosity for understanding the nature of things. And I think that, there's an advertisement for United Negro Colleges, and it's a, a wasted mind. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. You got a mind, and I don't care who you are, what culture you come from. You've got a mind, and that mind is a gift, right? And if you don't use it, you're going to lose it, and then one day you may discover, in another sense, what you could have discovered and
Mhm.
didn't because you weren't interested. And man, I got to tell you, being interested is 90% of getting there.
Totally. Yeah.
And this is why, for me, archaeology is so. Again, if you look at the Ancient Aliens TV show on the History Channel, the Ancient Aliens does a lot of interesting archaeological explorations. I mean, the pyramids and like, on these Grecian islands where they have these mega structures. And they go all over the world looking for archaeological evidence to support their idea that there was somebody or something here in the ancient past that handed down some kind of technology. And I personally think that Ancient Aliens has failed miserably because they
Yeah.
haven't proven
I
they
can't even watch
don't
it.
give
I
us
mean,
anything.
yeah.
No, it's terrible. I stopped watching it years and years ago.
Yeah. It's interesting what they're trying. It's just like anytime I'm like, I look up the claims or even the people they have on the show, it's just like, this is not the person to be like, I forget who the one he's like analyzing the glyphs on something in some Mayan temple. And then you
Yeah.
look it up and you're like, that's he's guessing. Like there's it's so disconnected from, other translations and stuff. So it's a shame. You'd think the History Channel would have a higher standard of like they have the ability to put out such educational content on this that's refined in a certain way, and it just feels like that show became a free for all. Where they're like, "You got
Yeah.
a theory, you're coming on," and
Yeah.
I just
Hmm.
I was interested at one point, and I just stopped. I couldn't watch it anymore. But I
Yeah.
get I
Same
get what
here.
your point is, though.
Same here.
Yeah,
Yeah, but my point also going to the idea that they use archaeology to support a lot of their crazy off the wall ideas. Well, look, there's a opening in a rock there. It looks like a doorway. That must be a Stargate. It's like it's crazy. That's crazy stuff. But okay, they're making it up as they go along, and they've got all these um, people that come along, like you say, with these theories. But I think that maybe there are shows like that are intentionally misinformation shows that they lead us in a certain direction. See, there's
yeah.
a deficit of truth in these kind of programs that don't actually lead you toward some deeper discovery. But I don't think they got anything. I'm just saying that.
Yeah. No, I mean it's funny because like I hate to even say this, but because I don't think this is the case. I think it's just we'll call it incompetence, I guess, that it's like is this actually controlled opposition, right? Is this put out to steer you in the direction of misinformation? I mean, again, this is maybe crazy to say, but where did the term conspiracy theorist come from?
Mm-hmm.
The CIA coined that as a way to go after people who are questioning things, to just paint them in a certain picture, right? So like
Yeah.
before the hippie movement, it was the freaks, and the freak movement caught on to the war protests, and well, we'll call it the hippie movement, whatever. So the hippie movement became very entwined with the war protests, and it was very intentional. The CIA worked to discredit these people, to be like, look at how they're dressed, look at how they behave, and it was a way to suppress the movement to protest the war, because they're like, well, look at who's protesting it. Are you on their side? And so and that's why I kind of thought about that for a minute. I'm not going to say that that's definitely what's happening. I think it's kind of like anything else. It comes down to clicks or views, right? The History Channel's like, this is gonna, people will either be into it or they'll get upset, but they're gonna talk about it and it's gonna get us views. I think it just comes down to that. It's just
Okay,
an
but
entertainment vehicle.
there's another component to this, and this goes to the, how can I say this, the dramatized, the dramatic portrayals of certain historical events. But again, they do it so that it makes it more interesting. Because, in other words, see, history it can be very boring. So what they do is they spice it up.
Yep, let's
And
sensationalize this to,
yeah, and so I had a great history teacher. He made history so. The reason why is that he made it come alive. He used examples. I don't know if you remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where the guy was in the
of
boat
course.
rowing. You ever see Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Oh yeah, that's a classic. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the history teacher had escaped from a mental institution or something, but he was the best history teacher because he was rowing the boat with George Washington across the Delaware, in the classroom. He made it interesting because he was not, how can I say this, limited to somebody else's curricula and to somebody else's idea of how it should be taught. So I think that we've been dumbed down, generally speaking, about everything. Math should be amazing. History should be amazing.
It is. Yeah.
Archaeology should be amazing. But there are people who have sort of ho hum, they yawn, yeah, history, whatever, math, whatever. No, you've got to present it in such a way that it is literally and genuinely compelling. And so this is when the History Channel, I can't watch their shows because I feel like I'm being fleeced. I
Yeah.
feel I feel like my mind and my emotions they're trying to get to me that way because they don't really have much.
Mm, yeah. And it's such a shame, because it's like history can be boring if you present it that way. But like I said, if you have the right teacher, it makes all the difference. Like I had an art history teacher in college. It was very dry. Just, this is this painting. It was painted in 1875, and it was this style. And I got an F. I failed. It was
How
awful.
can you how
So I
can you
had to
feel
so I
art
had to
history?
retake the class with a
Yeah,
different teacher. And you know what I got? I got an A,
yeah,
and I retained all of the information. Like that's how important having a
yeah.
good teacher is. I mean, not that was the point, but it is true.
Yes, it
Uh
is.
it's like I could have maybe pushed myself to figure out how to make it interesting on my own, but I still remember stuff that professor said all these years later. And the only thing I remember about the other professor was he was mumbling under his mustache.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you mentioned Ferris Bueller. Was that I'm trying to think. Did you mean like Dead Poet Society or something? I can't place what movie.
No, no. Ferris
I can't
Bueller's Day
remember that
Off is
scene.
he decides not to go to school one day and he steals his father's car.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, he steals Cam. He has Cameron steal his dad's car.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah. But I mean, I just
never drives
remember.
it. He just rubs it with a diaper.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I'm just, you know, I'm trying to give examples of why something would be interesting because somebody else took an interest in it first.
Yes, and I'll give him that. It's like I maybe personally, I disagree with the direction and angle that Ancient Aliens goes in, but I'm at least happy that somebody is asking questions, right? And it's like more people should be open to asking those questions. It's like it doesn't have to be about a Stargate or something, but just if something seems out of place, it's like, hey, like what's the deal with that? Like I love old buildings. I'm an old building nerd. And, like I look at stuff in New York City and it's just like they're like, this is when it was built. And I'm like, it just looks older. I can't place why. And it took a lot of time for me to research this to understand that when the Dutch came, when the British came in the 1600s, they brought a lot of stuff along with them. They imported stained glass windows, fixtures and stuff. So it's like, okay, so maybe it was built when you said it was, but older parts were incorporated. They call it adaptive reuse. And it took me way too long to connect the dots to learn that piece. Like, why didn't they teach that in school or just teach at any point instead of just it was built and that was that? To me, the fascinating point is how it was built in phases with non-locally sourced parts. To me, that's the part to teach people to get them excited about it. And then they go, wow, so history is so multidimensional. It's not this one step, close it, go on to the next piece. It's everything's built on top of the last, incorporated, renovated, restored. And that complicates history, right? Because you want to be able to lock things in to say, like, when did it happen? I want to just give it a date, and that's that. And it's like the answer is always, well, it's more complex than that. Um, but
Yeah,
that's what I love about it. It's to piece it all together. It's really,
yeah.
really interesting when you dig deeper. And when you dig deeper, you kind of get less answers. You just get more questions because you go, okay, well, if they did that, then what else?
You
And
know,
yeah,
you're mentioning that because I saw something in Israel. Somebody was doing a renovation on a property, and all of a sudden, some bricks fell aside, and they found an entire underground complex that was 1,000 years old.
yeah,
And so, to me, this is kind of fascinating because there were all kinds of remnants of things that were left in there. I guess it was a place where people used to gather, people that were maybe trying to be Christians or whatever it was. But I mean, these things matter because it is a big piece of the puzzle. You know what I'm saying? And so, if there's no why attached to it, then it's just dry and it's boring. And okay, they found another room in the pyramid or whatever. And the pyramid's a whole nother thing because nobody actually understands that either.
yeah.
Period.
That's such yeah. That's I feel like that's why it just I mean the scale and everything, but just it just captures people's imagination because they're like we have theories, but we don't really quite understand. Yeah, I'm trying to find there was another example. There was like a couple. I thought it was Italy. I was just trying to Google it. Same deal where it's like they had to renovate. They tore the drywall off, and behind it is this like old fresco painting or something. And it's
Yeah.
like, who in the world, however many years ago, was just like, yeah, just throw the wood up, just drywall. We don't need that. As there's just history is just all
Well,
around us.
another example is that didn't they just find something in Pompeii, a beautiful area that they had never found before that got uncovered?
There's a lot of work going on there now. The most recent one I saw was I think it was I mean I've got the article. I'll pull it up. It was and you'd think that we had checked everything there was to find here years ago, but there's plenty to still find.
Wow.
And and they're saying like based on what she's holding, that's these are symbols of their status or what their religious beliefs were.
Right.
And just trying to understand who were these people that they got life-sized stone statues made of them
Mm.
that it's you'd think it's like, oh, they found something of Julius Caesar, some big name whoever, and we knew it existed but now we found it. They find this and they go, who are these people? That's wild. Plus, I mean, the Herculaneum scrolls, that's
Yep.
just what a remarkable find that the I say kid, but he's he's in his 20s or 30s, but created the tech with I believe with AI, and you couldn't unravel the scroll or return
Right.
dust. And he had a scanner that figured out how to translate it without taking it apart. Unbelievable. So like again, the technology we have is most likely going to be the reason why we find the next big discovery.
Yeah. And AI is going to, I think, really help in that direction. Just like you say, with the Dead Sea Scrolls, the same thing. They were able to
Yeah.
scan the Dead Sea Scrolls and more verification of what is written in the Bible. So, yeah, it's fascinating. Technology, it can be a tool for evil or a tool for just phenomenal progress.
Yes.
Depends on how you use it, like everything else.
It's true. Yeah, I mean that's for people that like I talk to that don't quite understand. They're like, "Oh, like ChatGPT does your job for you." I'm like, "No, you tell it what to do. It's an extension of yourself to speed up what you're doing." My thing is you should never ask a question and then just go on about your day. Pull out your phone and ask, you can be hands-free. Just say, "Hey, why is it called a hamburger if there's no ham?" Right? If that's what you want to ask it. So
Yeah.
it'll be like, "Oh, well, it's from Hamburg, Germany, and blah blah blah." And you're like, "Okay, great." And then you put your phone away. Like I'll walk around. I'm like, I wonder how, what's the oldest playing cards that we found? I don't have to wonder. I don't have to drive to the library to find, something from the catalog and then go find the book, find the page. You just ask the computer. And then if you don't trust what the AI says, because we're still in the early stages of some of these chatbots, then it gives you something, then you can Google it, and then you can do your own research. But it would have
Right.
taken you how long to get to the step to do
Oh,
your
yeah.
research without it? It
Yeah.
gets you to from point A to point B so much faster now.
Yes, it does. And it's only a tool, you know. There was a wonderful movie called Needful Things, starring Max von Sydow. You ever seen Needful Things?
I don't think so. Let me see.
So the devil moves into this little town
Oh,
and takes
Stephen King.
over
Okay.
like a shop, that has historical items in it. But his whole aim is to turn people against each other because they have things that they want. Oh, this is the scene right here. I killed my wife with a hammer. Was that wrong? That's the question.
Oh my gosh.
But you
I'm a
see,
pretty
I'm
big
just
Stephen King guy, but I missed this one. I'll have
this is a great movie. This is a
Ed
great
Harris.
movie. I'm telling you, man.
Oh, I
It is
believe
so
it.
good. The reason I bring it up though is because he used the hammer for the wrong reason. You know what I'm saying? But
Yes.
he's talking to the devil saying, I just killed my wife. Was that wrong?
What was it? Is it Aldous Huxley who had a similar kind of comparison? I think it was in Brave New World. I'm probably getting something mixed up there, but it was basically here's a knife. Here's a knife. You could butter toast with it. You could murder somebody, or it could be a surgeon's tool to save someone's life. It's still a knife,
Exactly.
and it's
Yep.
just like that was like that's awesome.
It all depends on how you use it.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
well, hopefully people can choose good over evil because we could always use more of that.
Well, they have to recognize, though, that they have a choice. And unfortunately, most people don't, you hear a lot about, choice. It's your choice. People don't actually make that many choices. They allow themselves to be coaxed, and their choices are essentially made for them. And there was a meeting, I'm sorry, a hearing in which the former head of whatever it is at Facebook. Did you see this? An Australian girl
I don't think so.
talking about how they've targeted teens between the ages of 13 and 17, and that they had an algorithm that would detect when they were feeling down.
Okay, yeah, that
And,
sounds
and they
familiar.
found that that was a perfect time to pitch a product. And
Evil,
so if a girl
evil.
deleted a selfie because she didn't like it, that was the time that they pitched a beauty product. So,
Disgusting.
most people do not make their own
No.
decisions.
You
They
get
are
nudged
they
in a
are
direction. I mean, it's like with children, right? So it's like you don't want to tell your kid like you have to do this right now, and they're going to resist. So you go, do you want to put on your pajamas first or do you want to brush your teeth first? So it's the
Exactly.
illusion of choice, but
Yes.
I'm only giving you two, it's still in my control. You're not actually choosing.
Right.
And so much
Right.
in life is either that or you just get nudged down one road for so long, you can't even see that there are other options. Like, I give you the example of children, but even as adults, you're like, oh, well, how could I possibly do that? I can only do this or that. Why? You just have
Well,
to imagine the possibilities to do otherwise.
you know what's funny though, and it's not funny, it's ironic that RFK Jr., lifelong Democrat,
Hmm.
and yet the Democrats opposed him because he wants to go in and get rid of the things that are killing us. But we like the things that are killing us. We are accustomed to certain things that are killing us. I mean, it doesn't matter what it may be, the food, the chemicals that they put, now they're looking at fluoride in the water. I never thought that was a good idea. Poison the poison and drink it,
Yeah.
you know. So, yeah,
Don't
people
take
don't.
my brominated vegetable oil away. I love
Yes,
it in my
exactly.
Sprite. It's the best ingredient. It's like, no, you don't need
It's
that.
true. It's true. They don't know that they're not making their own decisions. I can give you a perfect example. When I was producing a particular show, I won't name who it is, during every break, the host would say to me, "Did I miss anything?" And I'd say, "Well, there's one thing that you could mention, and that it's a missing piece of that puzzle." Well, as soon as I would say whatever it was that I would say, the person would immediately grasp it and own the idea that I gave him. So it's as if I never existed there in that moment where I told him what I thought was missing. But that's okay because he integrated it into his presentation. See, to him it became authentic. But don't you see how that could be used in any different kind of variety of ways? That if you give somebody a bad idea, and the military has an article, and you can find it online, and the headline reads, "The mind has no firewall."
Hmm.
Well, so marketers understand that too. The military understands that too. The psychotronic weapons that will be used in future warfare. When they were in Desert Storm, they got the Iraqi, what was it? The Republican Guard. They got them to surrender by the thousands and thousands because they had a radio signal that caused a disturbance
Oh, yeah, yeah.
in their head, and they didn't know what it was. So they couldn't function that way. They all it was a radio signal. So you imagine the psychotronic weapons that they have now.
That's disturbing. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's like, what do they call it? The Havana syndrome, because it
The
was happening
Havana
at an
syndrome is the
embassy in
same thing.
Cuba. But there
Yeah.
was just a protest. I don't remember, like Serbia, or I can't remember where it was, that the police did use one of those weapons to disperse the public. That sound or whatever came out, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, like I'm nauseous. This is awful."
Yeah.
And yeah, that's
Sound is
wild.
powerful. Sound is
But
powerful
even
because it's a
like what you're
vibration.
saying, like it's even with knowledge, it's hard to overcome the things that we're susceptible to. Like you have your reptilian brain that you're like, well, I would never fall for something like that, and then you get whatever it is, like whatever kind of huckster, like pickpocket, whatever, like the misdirection.
Yeah.
You're like, well, no one could just take my watch off, right? And it's like, okay, well, oh, what's that? And by the way, I've had your watch for 30 seconds already. You didn't notice. Like that's the fact that your brain has such blind spots when you think you're well aware of your surroundings, is kind of unsettling, right? That you're like, I thought I had the instinctual survival skills to not let things like that happen. But your brain is just it's so easily able to be manipulated in that way. Even if just they only need a moment, right? Just like I said, misdirection is usually kind of what it comes down to, that
Yeah.
or just spiking some emotion. Um, it's like, okay, well, now that I've got you all worked up about this and your brain's firing on that, I can
Yeah.
slip this in and your guard is down. And there's yeah, if you study psychology, all those tactics, it's like I try to read about it so that I feel like it helps keep my guard up, but I feel like no matter what you do, if somebody's really good at it, they're gonna get to you, man.
Yeah. But so there's two thoughts around that. One is that somebody is good at it because they know how to push people's buttons. It's, there's a former CIA guy who, what's his name, Bustamante. He's got the big hair thing in the back, and he goes on shows and he tells people, he's a profiler. He tells how to manipulate people, how to all the tells of people, that how you can find out what their weaknesses are and so on. But there's a study of that. But then there's the other component, which is, and I said this before, is that people don't realize they're not making their own decisions. The best way to get control of somebody is to get them to believe that they are making their own decisions when they aren't making their own decisions. And the problem is that life itself exerts a hypnotic effect on human beings, period.